this tutorial, we're going to look at how we can perform a linear search algorithm on a two-dimensional array. So the basic premise is in 3 key steps, just like a one-dimensional linear search. First of all, we have to get a value from the user. What is it that we're looking for? Then, using count-controlled loops, 2 of them for a 2D array, we search row by row and column by column, looking for a match between what we're trying to find and the current value and the value stored in the current index of the array. If we find what we're looking for, we set that Boolean success variable here to true. Then we tell the user that they were successful, and then we exit the for loop. Our final if statement here, after the loops, will run only when what we're looking for is not in the array. So let's run it and see. So we're asked to enter a number. Now I'm going to enter 11 here. I can see that in actual fact 11 occurs at least a couple of times. So let's see what happens when we press enter. I get 2 output messages saying exactly the same thing. The first one was output when I was in the 3rd row and the 5th column. But then it occurs again down here when we see another match for 11. So let's look at our algorithm. The actual search is performed in this section of the code. So the outer loop is set up to run through every single row in the two-dimensional table or array. The inner for loop, while we're on each row, is set to run through every single column within that row. If the current value in the array that we're looking at is the same as the value that we're trying to find, then we raise the flag variable to true and we output a success message. Then we exit the for loop. But hang on, which for loop is this? Well, we're inside the nested for loop here, so exiting the for loop at this point is actually only exiting the inner for loop. What that means is if we're partway through the columns in a row, we're not going to bother looking at the rest of the columns in that same row. However, we then immediately go to increment the next row and the linear search repeats. That's how we got two messages output that the number 11 was in the array, because 11 occurred twice. So what we have to do is in between the nested for loop and the outer for loop, we're going to type this. If that flag variable, success in this case, is true, it's false that we initialized at the very top when we declared it. It will only become true if we find a match. If that's true, then exit for. So we've got 2 exit for statements. One exit for is related to the inner nested for loop that's going column by column. But then we check again, and the second exit for will exit looking at the rows themselves. So in other words, we can actually stop the linear search from looking at every single element in the array as soon as we find a match. We've still got the if statement at the end to cover us in case the number we're looking for isn't actually there. Now let's run this again and see if we can test our code. Okay, so I can see 25 appears a couple of times here and a couple more times over here. So I've got at least, and one few down here, I've got at least 6 instances of 25. So let's see what happens by inserting that if statement to exit the outer for loop between the 2 loops in our search. If I press enter, in fact, we only get 1 message this time.